Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Today on the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota, bad beats, butt punts, and pumpkin spice lattes, baby.
I can't follow that, Sam. Come on. Luke Inman, Superior Sports Talk. I'm going to tell you why Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer knew what they were doing all along.
Sorry, I also can't follow what Sam did. This is Arif Hasan, Pro Football Network. I might leave partway through to grab some snacks here at the airport. I don't know.
I'm Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings. Honestly, Arif, considering the two takes we just heard, that's probably fair.
Arif is on his way to London. The crew is all here. The Vikings are winners. It's the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. Plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Wow, what a football game yesterday. The Vikings win 28-24. We've got an hour of endless Vikings talk, breaking it down with your favorite local experts. My name's Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman on Twitter, Superior Sports Talk. Arif Hasan of Pro Football Network. He is en route to London, calling in from an airport, an unnamed airport, not sure which one. Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings. Locked On Vikings postcast joins us as well. He's at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter. Arif, how's your situation right now? Are you facing like a 6-hour flight, 7-hour flight? What's going through your mind?
Well, I'm going to be trying to talk over a PA system, so that's part of it. I've got a short flight followed by a 7-hour flight, so I'm going to be flying to Boston before I fly out to London proper. But right now I'm in JFK, which of the two New York airports is one of them. So there you go.
Just ask them to go turn it down. I'm sure they'd take that well. Go ahead. Get up there.
Hey, we're doing a
team.
podcast?
Don't you know me? Don't you know who I am?
Yeah, I've already been kicked out of 3 establishments before the show even started. So
Getting too rowdy.
I'm going to guess that that's going to go poorly. Yeah, no, for sure. You know me. I'm wild.
Could we get an English accent before the end of the show? A British accent?
Absolutely not. Not because it would be offensive to British people. I don't care about that. It would be offensive to everyone's personal sensibilities, and I do care about that, specifically my brand.
Maybe that'll be Arif's loser punishment when he loses the gambling update. We'll have him do accents for an entire show. Have him do a full show in an accent of our choosing. That sounds fun. Vikings 28, Lions 24. So much to break down. The Vikings had a really good win in week 1, a really bad loss in week 2, and this is somewhere in between. I don't think you really know how to feel about this when, after 3.5 quarters, a pretty disappointing, uninspiring, almost dismal performance, and then they grasp victory from the claws of defeat. Luke Inman, your first thoughts on kind of a bizarre game with a big finish and a KJ Osborne game-winning TD?
Yeah, obviously we're going to break it all down. Lots to get into, games within the game. But this one feels like more of a game that maybe the Lions lost than the Vikings won. We'll break down all the Dan Campbell gambles, as you like to call it. Certainly I thought that if you're going to commit to that approach, they had so much success until the very end. 4 of 5 going into that last 4th down decision to kick that field goal. Certainly that's something that the Lions fans are thinking about and pretty disgruntled about today. But lots of facets to get into in this one for sure.
Who wears the hero hat, Arif? Like, going away from this game, who do you bestow with sort of the cape and the crown for rescuing the Vikings?
You always seem to call me right when the PA system starts up. I would say, I mean, it is really difficult because it like Inman's right, like that a lot in a lot of ways this is a game that the Lions lost rather than the one the Vikings won. But obviously for for the Vikings to be able to take advantage of an opportunity has to be opened up. That's what the Lions did, but someone has to take advantage of it. So I think the two best, candidates for wearing the cape are probably obviously Kirk Cousins, who ends up throwing the game-winning touchdown, and KJ Osborne, who was targeted 3 times in that final touchdown drive, 2 of them for 28-yard gains. And so I think those two are probably the best candidates. It's really tough to give someone like Cousins the hero cape because he had played, and I'm going to say uncharacteristically poorly, but he played remarkably poorly throughout the game. And so digging your own self out of the hole that you create is not, to me, the same thing as being a hero, right? So I guess, push comes to shove, I'd probably give it to Osborne, but I do want to acknowledge, for comeback from Cousins, comes back from a 2 score lead twice. Like that's not bad, but at the same time, like a lot of the problems were created by him as well.
I don't know if
That
you
is
guys
incorrect.
all
We were
watched the
looking
press
for Ryan
conference.
Wright. Ryan Wright was
Oh,
the answer
yeah.
we were looking for.
Stud.
Funny Ryan Wright story. So Chris Thomason and I had a side bet before the game, and I don't know where he came up with the number, but Chris Thomason set the over-under at 44.8 net punt average for Ryan Wright, and I took the under, and it ended up at 44.3. Crazy good line by CT.
He's as good as Vegas. He's as good as Vegas.
He should be a bookie.
He's the house. He's the house.
How do we know he's
Rain
not?
Man.
Do we have confirmation he's not?
Do we know
We
what Chris
don't.
Thomason moonlights
Vegas
as?
just calls him up right before they set the
Yeah.
lines for the week, and they ask him for each game what it should be, and then he also goes through all the player props too. It's incredible.
I had a Kirk Cousins question. I'm guessing that you all, I was on the screen here. I was pre-writing the YouTube description yesterday for the postcast, basically assuming the Vikings would lose until they didn't. You guys probably watched the Kirk Cousins press conference like I did. Has Kirk Cousins seemed almost saddened after each of the Vikings wins so far this year? I know, Arif, you were in the room with me. He's been like bummed out, and especially yesterday, I think he's acutely aware of how poorly he played before the end, and I think it's a good thing that he understands that. Luke Braun, would you say that that's the appropriate reaction, that Kirk is pretty measured following that win?
Yeah, and he even called himself out. He said, "Oh, I should have got, or I thought I had more distance on this one, but I overthrew it, or I thought I had." He thought he had overthrown the final touchdown to KJ Osborne, which turned out to be pretty much perfect distance. And he's like, "Yeah, so I got to work on that." And I thought he called himself out on a lot of things. It's such a weird Kirk Cousins game to make heads or tails of, because kind of whether you want to say, well, see, this proves why I was right and Kirk Cousins is good. See, he came back in the fourth quarter. He's not supposed to be able to do that. You could just kind of point to that and ignore everything else. Or you can say, yeah, but he was terrible for 3.5 quarters and also prove that point. And if you're doing one or the other, you kind of all it gets you is you get to maybe prove your point in an argument at the bar. But if you want to actually make sense of this game, you kind of have to acknowledge, okay, it was bad and then it was good. And that's what it was. Calling it a medium game kind of obfuscates. It was bad and it was inaccurate, which is kind of weird. Passes were coming out high on him a lot, and then it was good. And that's what you can't solve any further than that. But yeah, Kirk Cousins he took ownership of that. I thought fine. I
mean, it is a step in the right direction, Luke Inman, that Kirk is allowed to play a bad game and still save the day at the end. Think of all the games last year where Cooper Rush played a bad game, and then he goes and he wins it at the end, and he gets credit for that. Joe Burrow played a bad game against the Vikings, and he gets credit for a win. So, you are allowed to play a bad game and still rescue the team at the very end when it counts most. So there are positives to take out of this game for the quarterback.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot easier to go watch this film after a win, obviously, than it is a loss. Kind of going back to the who gets the hero title question you asked just previously. It's in no way am I comparing him to this man, so I don't want to hear this in my mentions, but when Tom Brady is average and mundane for 3.5 quarters and then takes his team on a long drive to win the game, like we've seen 7 million times, he almost always gets that hero title and all the credit. So, it's hard not to give Kirk that hero title. Like Arif mentioned, KJ Osborne certainly would be the non-quarterback that you would give that to. But yeah, plenty of things to work on. I know we'll get into some more offensive discussion a little bit later, but I expect to see a little bit more pre-snap motion again, more window dressing, more creativity from this offense. I thought, once again, the offensive line was actually pretty solid. Yeah, he was pressured a few times for sure. There is those times like Philly looked a little panicky and was inaccurate. But for the most part, I thought that offensive line held up. It's just the offense as a whole, and we kind of had this in the back of our minds going into the season. It may take a few weeks to get into rhythm here and figure out what this whole thing's going to look like. They're running the football pretty well. They did yesterday, averaged nearly 5 yards per carry, but they're having a hard time kind of cashing in on that and, off those play actions and rollouts and things like that. But I'm much more confident in Kirk and the offense to turn things around right now than I am the defense. Let's just say that.
Yeah, we got to talk defense. We got to talk about Dan Campbell's decision-making. We've also got a 4-minute drill, Dalvin Cook injury, all that to discuss. A quick reminder first, Locked On Sports Minnesota is available on Amazon Fire and Roku, the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. Make sure you check that out. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available here on YouTube. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts on yesterday's 28-24 win. So the defense, fellas, allowing 24 points, not created equal. The previous week against Philadelphia, they allowed 24. Felt like it was way more and should have been way more. And every stat sort of reflects that. Yesterday, allowing 24 felt about right with as well as they played on third down. Some big stops they came up with. It is, though, a very frustrating bend but not break variety. And Luke Braun, you've been especially critical on the way this defense has looked the past couple of weeks. Did you feel like there was improvement at all from Philly?
Not maybe, because like in a per drive sense, just because there were more possessions in this game than there were in that game, which probably speaks to why it feels like the Philly game was so much worse. It felt like they were scoring every drive. And in this game, there were more drives, but the same amount of points. So sure, but that's the improvement, marginal, generously. But it's still a broken defense because they aren't very good at zone pass-offs and the communication and collaboration that requires. They just aren't good at it yet. And that's just going to take time to be good at. And I went into the season saying I'm basically just going to be saying this for the first 8 weeks. Yeah, it's bad. And the hope is that they can sort of gel a little bit more as the season goes on. But that's not going to happen overnight. And I think we just sort of live like this, where you're just going to kind of have 14-point deficits all the time. And you're just going to give up 3 scores in a row. And that's the way the 2022 Vikings will be.
Arif, did you see the missing poster that was outside the stadium last night on the way out? Danielle Hunter missing. Did you see that one?
I thought Hunter played really well. I think that a lot of the time when we're looking at, these defensive linemen or pass rushers or whatever, very often we focus on tackles and sacks, which I understand. I mean, the sacks are how they make their money. But the Lions were under fast pressure. I mean, if you take a look at pressure rates between the two teams, they were fairly similar, but the Vikings were one of the fastest to pressure in opposing quarterback in week 3. Jared Goff just got rid of the ball quickly, which, credit to the Lions for designing an offense that allowed that to happen. Hunter was a big part of that solution. Now, obviously, Za'Darius Smith ended up with more pressures than Danielle Hunter, but I think Hunter actually did a good job. It's just we're not getting the sack numbers that we kind of hoped, this early in the season. And he doesn't strike me as the athlete he was 2 years ago, which, that was a big part of his game. So, maybe we're kind of missing the Danielle Hunter we're used to seeing, but I thought he played well. It's just sometimes these things don't always show up, in the box score in the same way or on the highlight reel in the same way. But like at least one of, Za'Darius Smith's big pressures, quarterback hits, was enabled by, what Danielle Hunter was able to do in, pushing Goff around in the pocket, pushing Goff into somebody like Za'Darius Smith. So I thought he played well. Obviously, he's not playing up to the expectations that people have for him. So that's a fair criticism, but I wouldn't say that he was absent. He just didn't show up in the box score.
Yeah,
Luke
just to
Inman,
add on to that, next to
Yeah.
Hunter, too. Sorry, just real quick. Za'Darius, too, he had 5 quarterback pressures and 2 times on 4th down. I thought it was he just couldn't get home, but really good reps. I mean, forcing Goff to get off his mark and slide around in the pocket, which credit to Goff, escaping the rush a few times, especially on those critical 4th downs, feeling his way out of the pocket and extending those plays. So they got some pressure. They just couldn't get home. And to Luke's point as well, he even mentioned it and called it out last week. These Viking defenders in the secondary and linebackers having a hard time passing these guys off in that zone scheme. It's just going to take a while. I'm with Luke. It's going to take a while. And I think if they can't get pressure, though, with that front 4 and get home like we've seen the last 2 weeks, because remember, in week 1, Packers go into the game, they're down 2 starting offensive linemen. Then during the game, they lose John Runyon, so they're down 3 offensive linemen. That's an anomaly. That's not going to happen every week. So I think this defense as a whole has been disappointing compared to our expectations going in. And I'm not saying they'll ever be they may never be a top 10, top 12 defense this year, but they certainly can get better. It's just Ed Donatel needs to start making those proper adjustments.
Yeah, through 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I just looked it up real quick. I just looked it up. I didn't realize the PFF grades were out. Danielle Hunter was the highest graded defender on the Vikings from PFF. So
wow.
I think that his hidden influence, I think, is significant, even if he ended up with something like 3 tackles or something.
My missing poster joke now sounds moronic. What were the blitz numbers, Arif? Because the blitz total was 4 against Green Bay, 5 against Philly. They've not been blitzing. What was it yesterday? Do you have that handy?
I don't. I know that the Vikings were kind of lower on the blitz percentage. It was something I was taking a look at over the course of the game. But they were higher, I think, in blitz percentage than they typically are. I'll get you the blitz number in just a second. I'll probably interrupt one of the Lukes when we get to it.
Yeah, no, we'll tap dance for you. So in this marriage of rush and coverage, neither are particularly working right now. So I guess the question is, Luke Braun, like which one needs to come around first to enable the other one to succeed?
Coverage has a lot more work to do. The pass rush is a lot of 4-man rushes, and Za'Darius Smith, I think, has had 2 very good games here, both these home games. I think Danielle Hunter has been, at worst, fine. Like, I don't see this 4-man front as, like, a problem area on the defense, really. I see the coverage as a catastrophe area, and that is going to affect the pass rush because you can't get the ball out quickly if no one's open. But when everyone's open, it's really easy to just fire it off, especially when you can just run a spot route into the hole in the zone and fire 12 yards right away, pitch and catch. It's really hard to get home. You might have this sense of, man, Jared Goff kind of ran around a lot. He kind of broke the pocket, ran, found an open guy. Well, he had to run away from the pocket for a reason. And he also could find an open guy for a reason. So emphatically coverage. The coverage has been a catastrophe. And the only way to fix it is to just kind of keep working and just kind of keep marching forward, which sucks. Or if Donatel wants, you can kind of hit the nuke button and just become a crazy blitz defense and just live all or nothing. Maybe that's better. Or giving up 24 points a game and saying we can win those is okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I was able to find the blitz numbers, by the way. It is the highest blitz percentage the Vikings have put up this year. It was still like 10 total blitzes on 42 dropbacks, so it is one of the lower blitz percentages across the league in the NFL in week 3 again. So it's a low blitz defense, but it was 23.8%, which is a little bit below league average. Compare that to the 15% average, or I think it's a 10% average going into the game, 15% average over the course of 3 weeks. And honestly, I think that actually relates to Luke's point about how coverage is kind of the defining issue here, because the Vikings are not having that much issue getting into the quarterback's face, whether that is a pressure or not. The Vikings' pressure rate is about league average, but quarterbacks like Jared Goff and Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Hurts have been getting rid of the ball quickly against the Vikings, which is a good thing. It means shorter passes, but those passes are being completed. Now, if they can cloud up that coverage, those will turn into sacks or they'll turn into interceptions or something like that. But the issue is not in the pass rush. The issue is not in the blitz percentage because they're getting in there. They're defeating blockers. They're finding ways into the pocket, forcing quarterbacks off their spot. The only reason it's a low sack rate and an average pressure is because the coverage is not holding up to turn that effort into something meaningful.
Through 2
And it
weeks,
lowers the bar for what that coverage needs to be. Like you
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to cover for as long when there is pressure. So that if there's a case for optimism, it's that they don't have to get that much further. It's like that much less that they have to develop in their like zone passing skills, but they have to be better than the catastrophe than they are right now.
Yeah, so the stat I'm sitting on here, through 2 weeks, the Vikings were 6th in points allowed, 29th in yards allowed. After 3 weeks, 10th in points allowed, 30th in yards allowed. So there's something unsustainable about the way that it's going right now. Crazy things are happening, like teams failing on 4th down in the red zone or at the goal line like the Packers did, the Lions missing a couple field goals and failing on 4th down, Philadelphia throwing an interception. Like, it's just some bizarre things that probably won't happen all season long. And when you look to the coverage, Luke Inman, is there a player that you feel is getting victimized most, or is this schematic? Because last year you point to Alexander and Breland, those were the targets. Is there a target that's actually standing out to you, or do you think this is kind of on Donatel and just on the technique to get shored up?
Well, I think it's more on Donatel. If you had to make me pick one, I'm leaning more Donatel. But again, we knew heading into the year, it was a little bit more easy to be optimistic when you looked at the talent on paper. Remember, they were without Harrison Smith yesterday too. But I think we knew going in that we needed to be cautiously optimistic about the talent at cornerback. I mean, Patrick Peterson, he had a solid game yesterday. All in all, made some big plays on critical downs, 3rd down specifically a few times late in the game. But between him and then Cam Dantzler's 3rd year, Chandon Sullivan, we knew he was let go for the Packers for a reason. There was just a lot of question marks. And then they draft Andrew Booth Jr., and we haven't seen him yet. So I think they desperately need Andrew Booth Jr. on the field. And they not only need him on the field just for some fresh legs, but they need him to play well. Like, they need a little bit more youth into this kind of secondary right now. And, I think it's, again, I'm leaning more Donatel, but I think at the end of the day, we kind of knew this going in here, Sam, that this secondary was never going to be their strong suit. And there was going to be games and moments throughout the year, probably specifically early on, that they would probably get picked apart a little bit until they prove otherwise.
All right, we got to talk about Campbell's gambles here on the Minnesota Football Party. Also, make sure to comment down below what you thought of Campbell's gambles, because for most of that game, I agreed with Dan Campbell's decision-making. I, in fact, was infatuated with Dan Campbell's decision-making. 4th and 5, 4th and 6 at midfield, and it even seemed like Kevin O'Connell, in response to Dan Campbell, was making those type of decisions. I think O'Connell went for it on 4th and 6 on the touchdown drive, which is great. That's awesome. So for Campbell, then on 4th and 1, at the biggest moment of the game, to sort of reverse course and kick a 54-yard field goal to go up by 6, just mind-blowing, mind-blowing. And even if he does the conservative thing and punts and tries to pin the Vikings inside the 10, I'm not sure that they tie that game or win. Kirk Cousins oftentimes spends way too many seconds passing the ball over the middle. Vikings had no timeouts. Kirk probably feels a little more flustered near his own end zone. I think that would have been a better play than kicking the field goal. Does anybody want to stand on a table for Dan Campbell and defend that decision, or is everyone in agreement that sucked?
Yeah, kicking was
Oh,
bad.
it super sucked. Yeah. I think every analytical breakdown that you can find would tell you that it was a pretty bad decision. It was a swing of like something like 8 to 10 percentage points in win probability. Probably more once you account for the fact that the field goal was missed. And I think you should account for that, not because you can always anticipate whether or not you're going to make or miss a field goal when you make these decisions, but because the way Campbell played out some of these 4th downs is that he was waiting until the final moment to rush his special teams out onto the field, which decreases the probability that they'll do what you want them to do especially on a delicate operation like a field goal kick, right? Like we saw this actually twice, and I don't think it's been talked about very much, where 2 times Campbell was bluffing to get a fourth down out there, right? To have the fourth down offense out there, and then at the last moment switched in either the punt team or the field goal team. And when he switched in the punt team at the last moment, that led to a delay of game penalty. When he switched in the field goal team at the last moment, the missed kick, that increases your odds of missing the kick, keeping that offense out there only to have the field goal unit come on. So it wasn't just that he made a bad decision. He made a bad decision worse by trying to play these kind of weird games about what you can do and what you don't need to do. So that's part of it. Also, even his most aggressive decisions that he made early in the game were analytically sound. So it is very, and I don't think he's doing it because it's analytically sound. I think it's like ethos as a football coach, which I very much enjoy. But even his most aggressive ones, this is how miscalibrated the NFL is on fourth downs. The stuff that we perceive to be the most aggressive, or the stuff that over time is the best decision from a data perspective, and we're just kind of so broken that we're like 4th and 5 from the midfield, he's going for it. Holy crap! And it's like, well, yeah, or you could punt and get like 20 net yards. Like that's sound very football guy to me. So it's cool that he does that, and it gets really annoying when he moves away from it to do something that even to him, after the game, he was like, it was kind of a cowardly decision. So it was frustrating just because I want to see somebody like Dan Campbell succeed, somebody who makes the right decisions, but not because he's a nerd, but because he just loves playing football that way. And unfortunately, not only did he make the wrong decision, he made.
Is that your support dog? Did you bring your support dog with you?
I think one of these trolleys, because this keeps happening and it's the exact same bark each time, so that means it's probably not a dog. But I think it's like a trolley. It's been moving back and forth here that just makes that noise, like with its wheels.
Tell Fido that you're on a podcast.
I'll do my best.
I was just gonna, even if you make that kick, you're up 6 points, and then you give the Vikings the ball back. Still a one-score game. Still one drive. Need to stop a touchdown. It doesn't change the calculus all that much to make that kick, which is, I think, a big part of why all the analytic models are going to not be as big a fan of it. And then if you miss, it's worse than going for fourth down and not getting it because the kick backs you up. So just primo the worst possible option. I could be talked into punting there, trying to pin them. If you get the Vikings pinned behind the 10-yard line and they have to go the length of the field in a minute with no timeouts and, knowing who Kirk Cousins is, I could be talked into that. I think going for it's probably the right move because this is kind of who Campbell is. You could tell he came into this game saying, we're going for everything because we're going to treat third down like second down. And they ran the ball on like a 3rd and 7 once. They treated third down like second down, knowing that they're going to go for the fourth down if it's even remotely reasonable to, as long as it's not 4th and 12. And I think Campbell maybe got a little caught up in the moment and then started thinking a little too situationally and sort of lost sight of we're just going to go for everything, live or die by it, because we're the Lions, we're underdogs all the time. This is how we win games. And that's why I think Campbell's so perfect for the Lions. And I hope to see that continue. I love this for them. I hope to see them just be this YOLO team that just goes for everything. Screw it. And some days they're going to miss 5 of 6 of them and get blown out. And that's just how you live. But I think they've made the choice to live like that. I think that's pretty cool.
Luke's right. I think they got the right recipe. It didn't pan out this time. Hopefully he learns from his mistakes and moves on. But they got the right recipe, man. And that's why it was so disheartening and just a blow to the gut for the defense when they were churning out 4 or 5 yards on every first down, because you could almost see and know exactly what was going to happen. They were getting that 3rd and short situation, and if they didn't get it, they were going to go for it on 4th down. And that's why this great offensive line they've invested all these early picks in, and they got a great 1-2 combo with Jamal Williams and obviously DeAndre Swift. Jamal specifically yesterday was really bully ball. We hear it all the time. We heard it in Hard Knocks, and now we're seeing it. We saw it up close and personal yesterday. And when they went for it on 4th down, outside of the end there, they did it with authority. They were punching the Vikes D in the face, knocking the wind out of them. It's so disheartening to give up 1 4th down, but 30-yard strike to Amon St. Brown on 4th and 5. That drive results in a touchdown. 4th and 1. Not like bring out the chain gang here. We got to measure. No, 6 yards just right up the gut by Jamal Williams. Bully ball, same drive, another 4th and 1, play action, working off that Jamal Williams rush. They go play action this time, keeping him off balance. Josh Reynolds, 17-yard gain. That drive ended in a Hawkinson touchdown. 4th and 2, Reynolds again, 16 yards. At the end, though, again, like everybody's mentioned here, when it really mattered, 4th and 1, obviously Vikes D came up huge, stopping Williams. And then maybe you saw Campbell get in his head a little bit, get cold feet. He goes with the field goal decision. If I was a Lions fan, though, I'd rather have it that way than the other way, playing too conservative. Obviously, we know Campbell screwed up this one. He wussed out. But credit to the Vikings, too, for taking advantage. I will say, though, just as a whole, this Lions team, right? I mean, Vikings, I think all-time records like 80, 40, and 2. They've kind of dominated this series. In the 7 games leading up to this one, before Dan Campbell took over, they had won all 7. They were 7 in a row with an average win margin of 13.1 points per game. I mean, they're winning by 2 touchdowns every game. Dan Campbell shows up last year. Vikings have won by 2 points, 2 points. They lost by 2 points, and now they won by 4 points yesterday. So, again, if you're a Lions fan, I think you can feel this thing is headed in the right direction. This seems like a different Lions team just overall.
That's a great note by Luke, and Matt Patricia, bad coach. But the thing that separates Campbell from someone like Harbaugh right now is that Harbaugh has a code like this. He has a compass that guides him on 4th down, and he's not going to waver from it. And Luke, you said it. He got spooked by the 4th and 1 failure, it seems like. Didn't want to fail twice in a row, so he kicked the field goal, and he regretted it. And I said this on the postcast with Luke Braun. He's the blackjack player who doesn't know what to do on 16. He's kind of going with whatever he feels like, and he's changing his mind.
The table hates him.
So one time he'll randomly – I had a guy on Twitter, my buddy Sam, who told me, sometimes he just randomly stays on 14. Like, he just doesn't quite have a code that's etched in stone yet, and that's going to frustrate fans. So I think the aggressiveness gene is there, but he's got to have some kind of moral compass around it for how he's going to handle those situations game in and game out. Because if next time, he goes for it in that situation and misses, fans are going to be upset he didn't kick a field goal. Like, you can't win unless you kind of have something that defines you. Arif, anything left on the Campbell discussion?
No, I don't think so. I think that you all covered it pretty well. I really like what Inman had to say about how, he seems to be the right coach for the right team, and how you can get a lot out of a unit with the way that Campbell coaches, how he wants to coach, and what his philosophy is. And the thing is, a lot of it is like he comes off as a meathead, and he kind of is. But like one of the things that very much seems positive about him is not just that he like very deeply cares about his players and very deeply cares about kind of the mission that he's on to win football games, which doesn't sound like a super noble mission, but like within a facility certainly is that he's very responsive, right? When things are not working out with players, he's talking to them to try and figure out why that's the case. I mean, a big part of why Ben Johnson is such a good coordinator is he promoted Ben Johnson basically partway through the season in response to player frustration, right? But B, Ben Johnson himself is also very collaborative. I mean, there's a lot of elements of the Jared Goff Rams offense and what the Detroit Lions are doing, and that's because Ben Johnson is talking to people like Jared Goff. He's talking to people like Josh Reynolds to make sure that, everything they have coherent and working together, and they're responsive to what the players are doing. And so, he might not come off as like the smartest guy in the room, but that's not what makes the best head coach. The best head coach is the one that makes the best decisions, and you do that through a variety of ways, and he's using his resources really intelligently at the same time inspiring his guys. So I like him a lot. We're going to kind of see if he ever develops a consistent, decision-making framework. I don't know. Maybe he won't. That's kind of fun for me. But, for the moment, it's kind of cool to see, where this goes.
We've got plenty more to get to, including a 4-minute drill, Dalvin Cook's injury, and a gambling update. But speaking of gambling, this show is brought to you by betonline.net. It's your source for all sports wagering info. Looking ahead to London, Vikings on betonline.net, favored by 3, over-under of 4. So the Vikings are field goal favorites. BetOnline.net. You can get NFL lines, NCAA football lines, MMA, boxing, and golf. It's all there, and it is your top source for all sports wagering info. Get up-to-the-minute developments, matchups, news, and podcasts at BetOnline.net. Use your laptop, mobile device, whatever you have, to learn more about the trends. BetOnline, where the game starts. 4-minute drill time, fellas. I want you to make a case for the Vikings record at the bye. They're 2-1. They've got New Orleans, Chicago, and Miami on the road right before the bye week. Luke Inman, we'll start with you. Put a minute on the clock. Thank you for that. Luke Inman, we'll let you make a case. The Vikings record at the bye.
Yeah, I'm just kind of honing in on this next game here at London versus the Saints. When I talked about the schedule before the year, I said, watch out, pump the brakes a little bit. I know Luke Braun mentioned this as well, because these first 4 games, not easy. There's a legitimate chance of being 2-2, maybe 1-3. Now we're here. Worst they can be is obviously 2-2, obviously. I'll say this, though. I don't know how good the Saints are going to end up being at the end of the year. I know they had a lot of expectations going into the season, but right now, as we sit here today, Saints are not playing good football at all. Jameis Winston dealing with a serious back injury, affecting the entire team. Defense, still solid. It's got a lot of talent. Offensively, Mike Thomas is back. Chris Olave is legit. You know Kamara can go off at any given moment. But their offensive line severely banged up. And when you got a pocket passer like Jameis, who's hobbling around right now, needs protection, it's just been a recipe for disaster thus far. Injury report's going to be huge this week, I think. If the Saints are missing multiple offensive linemen, Jameis isn't 100%, which I doubt he will be. Vikes, I think, got a great shot flying back from home from London, 3-0 all-time in London, and sitting at 3-1 after this week.
What about the bye week record?
Well, I'm worried about Miami, obviously. I'm going to say, I'll say 5-2. Is that right? What do they got? 6 games? 4-2?
So 5, they'd be 4-2. Okay.
This is going great.
Yep.
Sounds good. Arif, you're up.
That was a really good breakdown of the Saints game. There's 2 more games on the schedule until we get to the bye. No, I think the Vikings are a better team than the Saints. I think the Vikings
Luke.
I think the Vikings are a better team than the Bears, and I think the Vikings will get blown out by the Dolphins. So, I guess that's probably 2 more wins and 1 more loss. They'd be 4-2, but it really feels like walking backwards into 4-2. Obviously, this Vikings team is liable to just kind of break your heart, and so I could see them kind of just fumbling against the Saints. The thing about the Saints is that they've got a bunch of talented players, like Luke said. They're just not coherent right now. They're not on the same page. If that suddenly happens while they're in London, I don't think the Vikings have any recourse. I think they'll get blown out of the water. So I do think that they're likely to win the next 2 and then lose the third one to be 4-2. But I think that that's a very precarious situation, and they could really fumble the bag.
All right, so we've got a 4-2. Luke Braun, are you going to vary from chalk here?
Yeah, I'm going to be a hater. So I think we all kind of agree. Miami, tough game. Bears, not as tough of a game. And it all kind of comes down to what we think of this Saints game. But here's the deal. Part of what is sinking the Saints is all of these Jameis Winston interceptions. And the Vikings defense is in such a bad way right now that they are sort of a get-right kind of unit. I don't know if they are good enough at positioning themselves to take advantage of the bad decisions that Jameis Winston tends to make. I don't think that they're in the right spots enough. And so I'm worried about this Saints game. Now, there's a lot more wrong with the Saints than that, and so I could just as easily see them winning this one as losing it, and they are favored in it. But for the sake of being different, I'll say that they're 3-3, because also, even if they win this Saints game, nothing is stopping them from totally falling apart and dropping a stupid one to the Bears. We know that they are capable of that, as bad as the Bears are. They're capable of losing to the Saints, losing to the Bears, and then beating the Dolphins 3-3, and it'll make no sense.
Football's weird. I was going to be the hater, Luke Braun, so you took that role from me. I was also going to kind of bring into question whether this Saints game is really a gimme or not. Obviously, the playing field is pretty level in a neutral site. Both teams have to travel overseas. Don't know how the Saints are handling their travel. I do find it a little curious. The Vikings are flying out Thursday night and needing only they have 2 days to basically get their body clocks right. Maybe that's a little overrated. But Bears game, I think you have to pencil in as a win if you want to be taken seriously. Miami is going to be really difficult. They'll probably be 4-point underdogs in that one. But Jameis Winston is bad right now. And I do think the Vikings have a great chance to win the game. I'm picking them to lose. I'm picking them to lose the game right now. I might change my mind as the week goes on. But I think 3-3 at the bye. And like I mentioned, there's some unsustainable things going on, like opposing kickers missing field goals, missing on fourth downs. Like the 30th in yards will catch up to the Vikings at some point. So we got a couple 3-3s, couple 4-2s. Watch the Vikings go 5-1 at the bye and make us all look silly. And Dalvin Cook's role as well. You mentioned injury report, Luke Inman. Dalvin Cook's probably going to be on that injury report with a shoulder injury that knocked him out of yesterday's game. The early season Dalvin injury, unfortunately, is an annual tradition. First of all, Luke, do you want to see Dalvin Cook try to play through this pain on Sunday after a pretty effective game, or would you rather see him sit and bring in a Chandler or a Wongwu to get more involved?
It's tough without knowing the severity of it. Personally, just sitting here today on Monday morning, I would say just pump the brakes. It's almost like we talked about Justin Herbert. Why would you suit him up knowing the injuries that he's dealing with the ribs and risk your entire season? Matt Hasselbeck said he played with that injury. He goes, I wish I wouldn't have played because it lingered the entire season. Obviously, this is a different situation here with Dalvin, but I would say pump the brakes. You've got great depth. We knew it going in that Madison and Kene Nwangwu, we haven't even seen Ty Chandler active yet. They could probably carry the load, as we've seen Madison do quite a bit. And, you mentioned like this is the yearly thing with Dalvin. It's happened versus the Lions too. Remember in 2017, week 4, he tore his ACL. They lost that game 14-7 versus the Lions. Case Keenum ends up going up, 11-12 the next 12 games. They went 9-1, I think, in the next 10 games there. I don't know. I would say pump the brakes, Sam. I really would. Knowing the depth that they have, I would say, try to ease up on Dalvin. Give him the proper time to rest, and you want him back at 100%.
Yeah, the Dalvin, I hate making light of this because getting hurt is no fun. No one wants to see NFL players get hurt. But the Dalvin injury fumble combo is such a thing, and I feel like it happens also when he's trying to play hurt. And his effectiveness goes down so much. Like if you look at the past 3 years where we all agree he's been playing banged up. Got hurt versus Denver in 2019. Next 5 games, 3.2 yards per carry, 3.4 yards per carry, 3.0 yards per carry, inactive. 2020, hurt versus Seattle, final 7 games, 4.2 yards per carry. Last season, hurt early in the year in the Arizona game, had 7 games under 4 yards per carry, and then 4 separate games missed along the way. And they really never saw the healthy Dalvin Cook. So I'm of the opinion that they need to take a different, more cautious approach and make sure he gets healthy, because if you look through his game logs too, like coming off of missed games or games where he got hurt, Mike Zimmer was letting him rush the ball 32 times. That's so antithetical to the approach you would want with a running back, especially someone with the amount of tread on Dalvin's tires. So, Arif, what's your take on Dalvin right now?
Yeah, I think that the reason that you'd want somebody like Dalvin to play is, and I know this sounds really dumb, is because he can help the football team win games, and you're not getting Dalvin Cook the play you're getting when he's playing hurt, like you said. And I think that we can make a distinction between the types of injuries he suffers and what happens when he plays through those injuries, because I thought the ankle injuries really limited his burst, and I thought it made him a much worse running back, whereas the shoulder injuries made it much more likely that he was going to fumble, right? And so I think that maybe there's some differences there. Whew.
We lost him.
Don't love this New York air. Yeah. So I think that there's not really much of a reason. Madison is an effective back. You're not going to get the explosive runs from him. You may have to mix in somebody like Longwu or Chandler to really get the full running game. But
Bless you.
I don't like talking about running
Bless
backs, man. This is just what happens.
Doesn't it look like Arif
but
is broadcasting from a cloud or like heaven? Like it looks like he's just in this angelic realm with this like halo.
I know I'm gonna get like the YouTube comments, like Arif just figured out a better background. But like I'm at an airport, I don't want to violate anybody else's privacy. This is the only place I can find where there's not going to be anybody else in the shot. So, stick it up your craw, YouTube comments. No, but I think that you're gonna get a. I don't even read I don't even know if the comments are mean, right? Like I have no idea.
Probably.
But I think
if not, they should.
Yeah, I mean they're YouTube comments, right? Yeah,
they're meaner on Twitter than YouTube. YouTube's pretty nice.
Really?
For now.
Oh wait, we gotta get those numbers up, right? We gotta get some haters going on the YouTube channel. But yeah, no, I think that you're not getting as much from a running back in that scenario. So like, why play through injury? Because the difference between, and I don't think Justin Herbert should have played, but the difference between Justin Herbert and Chase Daniel is enormous. Even an injured Justin Herbert is significantly better than Chase Daniel. The difference between Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison is not trivial. Injured Dalvin Cook and a healthy Alexander Mattison are not that far apart. So I don't really understand why you would want to, like, the whole reason the Vikings didn't trade Mattison is this exact scenario. Now make good on the phantom third-round pick you gave up or fourth-round pick or whatever, and just play Alexander Mattison. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah. Luke, Braun,
I
your
think
thoughts
Madison's
on this?
been playing pretty well, right? Like,
he has, yeah.
Am I out of line? This is the best we've seen from Alexander Madison. And I feel like he's been
his rookie year
well.
was better.
Rookie year was pretty good.
His rookie year was better?
Yeah.
He looks like he's playing for
a
job. He knows he was almost traded, and he looks. Yeah, you're right. Maybe rookie year was better on paper. Yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
But this is
4.2 yards a carry.
And more specifically, I think what we've seen from Madison for most of his career, he tries to bounce and get the edge so often, and he can't because like he's not Dalvin Cook, but he tries to be Dalvin Cook. And in this one, he has not been trying to bounce things outside nearly as much. He's just been going straight up and down. He can juke a guy, make a guy miss, but more importantly, he can bowl through you. That touchdown run was that is Madison. That's who Madison should be. And I think he's been a little more disciplined about that. And then plus he's just showcased like better vision. And that helps me make this decision a little bit, right? Like, yeah, I don't necessarily need to take the devil's bargain of Dalvin Cook. Is he going to get a shoulder hurt fumble again and then leave the game? And now he's out for 6 weeks, when I feel like I can trust Alexander Madison a lot more than I kind of felt like I could for the last couple years. And that makes this a whole lot easier. Like this should be fine, honestly. Yeah. Put Madison in, let the dude get healthy.
Cook with 16 career fumbles now after yesterday's. Does anyone want to gander how many fumbles as a Viking Adrian Peterson had?
I do not.
No, but I'm going to guess that Adrian fumble percentage is only slightly higher than Dalvin Cook's, right? Because I think Adrian Peterson's percentage is going 2.4, 2.5% was one of the highest in the league. Dalvin is like 1.92%, not including the last fumble, last I looked. So it's actually not that significantly far apart, and it is one of the higher fumble rates in the league. I don't know what happens when you take out the fumbles where he's injured, though.
Yeah, well, I think that has to count, right? I mean, that has to be part of the equation. So the stats on that, Arif, and no one's going to guess the number on Peterson. Luke Inman, play along. Guess the
73.
Love it.
That's a lot of fumbles. 39 fumbles as a Viking. Now, per touch.
Felt like 73 though, didn't it?
Felt like about 73 though. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not counting the playoff.
It wasn't including
fumble.
postseason. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's at least 4.
And that Seattle fumble counts for 3.
Yep.
Playoff fumbles count for 3, and there were 3 against the Saints and then 1 against Seattle. So per touch, Adrian Peterson fumbled 1 in 68 touches. Dalvin Cook has fumbled 1 in 78 touches in his career. How's that for a little nerdy stat of the day?
He's got to walk around home with a football.
There you go. Yeah, why am I the one wearing glasses? You should be the one wearing the specs, man.
What should we do now? Lewis Cine didn't start. Josh Metellus got the start in front of Lewis Cine. Is there any reason to panic? Arif, since you're not muted, go ahead and talk.
I just muted myself. Sorry. Panic is maybe not the word I would use, but a couple of weeks ago I said we need to already begin this conversation about whether or not Lewis Cine's actually good at football. Not because he can't push Cameron Bynum, who's playing well, but he can't push for playing time. Now, I know about the knee, right? But, if the Vikings are not willing to deploy some really interesting three safety sets, especially against, Philadelphia, where with a running quarterback, there could have been a lot of opportunities to put more speed on the field, take Jordan Hicks out, put Lewis Cine in. They're not willing to experiment with that. I think that tells us a little bit about, who Cine is and what he's going to do. And now we have a stark, a change in our perception of him because he was not the next person up. They didn't even split. I actually didn't look at the snap counts, but I didn't think Lewis Cine saw. Yeah, they didn't even split any time. Yeah, so 0 to 1 snaps is my guess. But Lewis Cine didn't see any time as one of the two deep safeties. It is a good time to have that conversation. We generally do not treat safeties like we treat cornerbacks, where a cornerback maybe it takes a year or two, right? Like Jeff Okudah is right now kind of benefiting from the 2-year kind of grace period we give cornerbacks. We're very familiar with that with the Vikings. We don't generally do that for safeties. Maybe we should. I don't know. Maybe he turns into a good pick. But right now, I think we can conclude that at the moment, he's bad at football. Doesn't mean he's a bad pick. Doesn't mean he'll continue to be bad at football. But it tells us, hey, for a team that wants to win right now, to use your first-round pick on a position where you didn't need to draft a safety, right? And now that safety is not currently good at football. There's some pretty serious questions there.
I can't bring myself to hit any kind of panic button on a rookie before Halloween of his rookie year. This just happens. Sometimes it takes some guys some time to get used to the speed of the game. And putting him in would be bad because he's not used to the speed of the game. But there are problems that get fixed with experience, and there are problems that don't. Garrett Bradbury doesn't gain weight with experience, right? That's not something that you sit him for 8 more weeks and he was actually going to be better. But with Lewis Cine or with other rookies that, sat for the first 6 weeks, like Brian O'Neill or Justin Jefferson, didn't know the playbook till halfway through the season, according to Kirk Cousins. And so his usage was sort of defined by that. And yeah, he got in on the game, obviously way different thing, but everyone's kind of on their own path. And from what I saw in preseason of Lewis Cine, from what we saw in camp of Lewis Cine, he was late to a lot of stuff. He was making the right reads, but he was a little slow to do it. And that means, the game needs to use a cliche. The game needs to slow down for him. Once it does, he will be fine. And the Vikings did experiment with 3 safety looks and even I think a 4 safety look, Arif said once, right? So the way they behaved before the season tells me that they do have some kind of thing in mind. They've also mentioned, his injury kind of put his development behind. So, we're just got to wait for it. I don't know. I feel like I'm always preaching patience when it comes to rookies, constantly, but I'm going to do it again. Give it some time.
Remember KJ Osborne. Remember KJ Osborne.
Yeah. Let's see him on the field. Let's see what happens when he does get on the field. He's not going to never play. He's going to get on the field someday. Let's see what that looks like.
Yeah.
The Vikings have not deployed a 3 safety look one time this year, have they? Or correct me if I'm wrong. Have they?
Don't think so.
Not as far as I can tell. Yeah.
So, if you were at training camp, if you're at practice maybe one time, okay, if you're at training camp, if you're there during practice during the week, it's not surprising not to see him out here because, again, he's been with the 2s the entire time. So you're not going to all of a sudden on Sunday see him with the 1s. The focal point is more, is it concerning? And why isn't he with the 1s? And obviously we don't know what the coaches are seeing. Luke mentioned, you were out at camp and stuff. He did maybe look a little bit slower there. No panic button yet for sure, but maybe is this more of, Donatel, again, simply needs to switch things up and get to some of those sub packages. And when he does deploy a 3 safety look, when Harrison Smith's healthy? Is it going to be Harry, Bynum, and Metellus, or is it going to be Cine in the mix? If he's not in the mix in the 3 safety look, maybe we see it this week finally, some new wrinkles here in this Ed Donatel defense. Then I will start to be a little bit more concerned, but certainly not the start that you want. You always want these rookies to come out and splash right away, but I'm not hitting the panic button quite yet.
All right, Arif, I know you got to run here. Let's quickly get a gambling update and then party fouls for the group. Gambling at football is hard, fellas. Nobody went 2-0 this week. I went 1-1. Ravens covered. Chiefs Colts went under instead of over. But we have some epic bad beats. Luke, over 52.5. Vikings Lions. Ouch. Ouch.
Was it 52 on the dot?
It goes 52.
I thought wasn't it 51 and a half?
I lost on a Kirk Cousins completions
wasn't it? Are you sure it was 51? Come on,
No, I'm
man.
dead serious. I thought it was
I
51
forgot
and a
what
half.
the score was. I needed a reminder.
Well, it might have ended at 51, but we locked you into 52.5. It doesn't lie. I mean, I would never make a mistake with typing, right? So that was a bad beat. And then Hasan, Raiders Titans under 45.5. It goes 46. Oh my goodness.
I'm so glad I never remember my bets so I can react in real time. But I don't feel as screwed finding out afterwards than finding out live. So I guess there's also that.
It was a 2-point conversion. It came down to a 2-point conversion. Luke Braun, you're 0-1.
Oh, really? Oh, now I feel super.
Yeah. Braun's 0-1. He has Giants Cowboys tonight, needing over 39. So not a lot of movement except Arif kind of plummeting and Luke Braun plummeting further. Luke Inman and I at the top. Party fouls. Arif, since you have to board a flight, we will let you go first after we run the animation.
I didn't think of a party foul beforehand, so I'm just going to go with party foul Dan Campbell. I can't believe you did the thing that we talked about for about 20 minutes. Don't do that next time. Be better about it. That's my party foul. Now none of you can
Be
take
better. I love it.
I'm taking Jimmy Garoppolo. He Orlovsky. Get out of here. What are you doing? Know where the back end line of
With the pick
end
six.
zone is. Come on, man.
Safety
And he
plus
threw a
It
pick
was
six on the same
cerebral.
play.
It was cerebral. Yeah. Saved the
He
pick
got a
six.
safety
I
and
was
it- and it
legitimately
was
at the
relieving.
Orlovsky game, though, back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
He did.
Never
The
forget it.
safety was a blessing.
Yeah, the most fortuitous of safeties. Get out of here, Jimmy G. Come on, man. You're not helping your trade value.
Hey, did anybody see Dalvin when he scored the touchdown run over to the fans and totally juke him out like he was going to hand him the ball? 2 Vikings fans. And then all of a sudden, right at the last second, turned around and ran away with the ball. I was like, no,
Yeah,
you got to, if you didn't see it, you got to go back and watch it because,
Why is this a
I
I'm
party
looking it
foul?
up right now.
oh, dude, it just hurt my heart. It's like,
Jeez.
I'm sure these 2 people drove all the way down from like Bemidji and now they're here and they splurged the extra money on the front row seats. And oh my God, Dalvin scored right next to us. Oh my God, he's going to give us the ball. Oh, jukes us out and runs away after literally, hey, here you go. You want this? No, I don't think so. And it just didn't make sense to me. 'Cause
Elite
it's not
behavior.
Lions fans. There's
I
2
love it.
Vikings fans.
love
Party
it.
foul, Dalvin. What are you doing? Hand it off.
Yeah, I think he gave it to Ed Ingram for the spike, too. He wanted the rookie to
Maybe he
get
changed his
first
mind at the
career
last
spike.
second, but
Yeah.
it looked like a dirty move there for a second.
Dirt, yeah, that's rough. My party foul, the halftime performance at US Bank Stadium, Frisbee catching dogs, but the throwers of the Frisbee were like Kirk Cousins, and the dogs were like KJ Osborne on the play that they missed, like the overthrow, where Osborne was wide open and had to dive. They couldn't connect with the dogs. Like, the dogs are giving it their all, and the Frisbee throwers are overthrowing them, just airmailing the Frisbees. Give the dogs a chance. Give them a chance to make the play, and they will make the play. Really got me.
Were you and Thomason?
Never paid
Were
it-
you and Thomason sitting there at halftime griping about that to each other?
I bet.
Well,
I have
we had
never
some
paid
side bets
attention to
going
what
on.
occurs
Yeah.
during halftime because I'm like busy getting food. So like, I commend you for always being detailed enough to look at what's happening on the field, Sam.
Wouldn't miss it.
Luke, did you
Wouldn't
pull
miss
up the Dalvin touchdown? Did you see it?
That's so egregious. That's on purpose for sure.
That's sick, dude.
What are you doing?
What's up?
What did those fans
What's
do to you?
up? It would make sense if they were Lions fans, but it's like two Vikings fans.
Yeah.
Clearly just garbed out.
He
head to
definitely
toe
just
in
like
purple.
changed his mind.
Yeah.
But like,
dirty.
at least it wasn't a kid. If it were a kid, that would have really sucked. But it was just like some adult.
God, that would have
It's like-
ruled if it was a kid. Oh my God, that would have been amazing.
Arif, you're
Dalvin
sick.
in the same
You're
same
sick.
camp as
I'm
that foul
a
ball
bad
guy. with
person.
MLB.
We've established this multiple times.
Yeah.
No,
Embracing
you're
your
right. Fair enough.
supervillain
Yeah.
while speaking to us
I
from
hope,
a white
I, hope,
void.
I hope Dalvin breaks more children's hearts. That would be great. I would. That is the scenario in which I cheer for him to get contract extensions.
Hearts broken per AAV.
Yeah.
Have
Here's
a
a
good
blank
flight, Arif.
check.
All right. Peace
What's your
out.
beverage of choice? What do you get
On
to
a
drink
flight?
when the drink cart comes by? Yeah.
Dude, you know me. I get coffee, man. I'm broken.
I'm broken. It's
You're
not
not-
like there's
you're
more
not
than four
slamming Bloody
options
Marys.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's a Red Bull, if I'm feeling wild.
Mm.
He's on
I
that
hope they have
red
a good
eye.
in-flight
but,
movie selection. Thanks for calling in from the airport. He's Arif Hasan, Pro Football Network. Luke Inman, Superior Sports Talk. Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings, and the Postcast. And I'm Sam Ekstrom, Ron Johnson Show, and Locked On Sports Minnesota in general. Endless Vikings talk with local experts. We're back on Thursday to preview Vikings Saints. It's the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota.